So we're going to create a graph with actually two different data sets on it now. So what we have here is we have the number of neutrons found in the atoms for the first 20 atoms right here. And then in column C, we have basically the atoms for, or excuse me, the neutrons for elements that are above atomic number 20. And to graph both of these, and there's a reason we're graphing it like this, and we'll see that here in a second, but we're going to highlight all of our data. So I'm going to click up here, and go ahead and highlight all of my data, and then I'm going to create a graph. When it does that, it gives me the option of a column chart, but what I want to change that to is I want to change that to a scatter graph. And what we'll see is we have both sets of data being graphed right now. So both the blue here are my number of neutrons in the first 20 atoms, and then the red line is the atoms for above atomic number 20. And we do that because we can see the two different sets of data, and we're going to customize this so we can get a sense of what this graph is telling us. So I'm going to title my graph neutrons of atoms. Because that's really what we're looking at, the different neutrons that we find within the atoms. And then I'm going to go down to series, and what we're going to do in this is something called a trend line. And so I don't want to apply this to all of my series, so I'm going to click on this, and I want to just apply this to the elements of the first 20 atoms. So I'm going to click on that series, and so with that, I'm going to ask it to form a trend line. On that trend line, then, I'm going to come down. That is a linear relationship, so I'm going to keep that, the type, correct. And then I'm going to label this. Could use an equation if I wanted to with this. We're just going to leave it as none. And then I'm going to just title my two axes. So going back up here, my horizontal axis is showing my number of protons. Is my horizontal axis. My vertical axis is my number of neutrons. And so that's going to basically get me to graph this, and what we see is we see this graph here where this line, and we'll talk about what this line means, but this line basically follows the trend that we see for these first 20 elements. So you can see that line matches that data really well. And then what we see is these dots for the elements above 20 kind of starting to fall above that line. And we'll talk about what that actually represents. So the last thing I can do is just click up here and then move it to its own sheet. That's going to make it a nice big graph for me to be able to visualize and be able to work with and be able to understand.